Hunger doesn't wait. It doesn't negotiate. And in the early 1930s, it pushed millions of American families out of their homes and onto the open road. This wasn't the road trip we think of today. No packed lunches. No maps marked with tourist stops. This was survival in its rawest form. Families were running from hunger, from foreclosure, from the dust storms that swallowed entire farms whole. The Great Depression hit like a silent thief. Banks shut their doors. Factories went dark. Men who worked hard all their lives walk home with empty hands and no way to provide. Women stared at pantries with nothing left but flour dust. Children asked questions parents didn't know how to answer. And so the same thought echoed in homes across the nation. If we stay, we starve. If we leave, maybe, just maybe, we'll survive. That single word, maybe, was enough to push families into desperate action. They piled into whatever could move. Rusted trucks, patched up wagons, even cars so fragile the owners weren't sure they'd make it out of the county. Bed springs were tied on roofs with rope. Crates of chickens clucked in the back. A few tools, a blanket, a Bible, maybe a photograph of the home they were leaving behind. That was all they could carry. And when they left, they weren't alone. Across the Midwest and the South, roads filled with a steady, heartbreaking parade of humanity. Cars coughed black smoke, wagons groaned, and families shuffled westward with the same look in their eyes. Fear in one corner, determination in the other. One traveler at the time wrote, "It felt like the whole country was moving, every car loaded high, every face gaunt and tired. You could hear the engines before you saw the dust." They moved because whispers traveled faster than fear. Whispers of California. Whispers of jobs in cotton fields and orange orchards. Whispers that somewhere, far beyond the dust, opportunity still existed. Of course, they didn't know what awaited them. Some would be welcomed, most would be turned away, many would suffer in ways they couldn't yet imagine. But on those long roads, under that scorching sun, all they could hold onto was hope, the hope that life had to be better than the death they were leaving behind. For those families, there was one road that carried that hope. One road that promised a straight path toward survival. It cut across 8 states, 2,448 miles, linking the broken Midwest to the promised land of the West. That road wasn't just pavement. It was lifeline. It was chance. It was a desperate gamble. When the world was collapsing, Route 66 became more than just a highway. It became a vein pumping life across a dying nation. Stretching from Chicago, Illinois all the way to Santa Monica, California, this road crossed 8 states and nearly 2,500 miles. Before the Depression, it was marketed as the Main Street of America, a highway connecting small towns, diners, and businesses. But when disaster struck, its purpose changed. For desperate families, it wasn't about travel or leisure, it was about escape. Route 66 offered something no other road could, a direct path west. It wasn't perfect, rough patches, dangerous curves, and endless stretches of dust, but it was the most reliable way to reach California, the state people believed held salvation. Think about the families back then. They didn't have GPS, rest stops, or even steady gasoline supplies. They followed signs painted on barns, or asked strangers for directions. Many traveled in old jalopies held together with wire and faith. Yet they pushed forward, mile after mile, because this road represented the only thread connecting them to survival. For towns along the highway, Route 66 brought an unexpected transformation. Gas stations popped up on empty corners. Mom-and-pop diners served travelers who hadn't eaten a hot meal in days. Roadside mechanics became lifelines, patching tires and repairing engines for a few coins or even a loaf of bread. Entire local economies rose out of the dust, fueled by the steady stream of families passing through. But for the travelers themselves, this road was brutal. Engines overheated under the relentless sun. Tires shredded on sharp rocks. Children cried in the back seats from hunger and heat. Parents drove through the night, too afraid to stop, worried the car wouldn't start again. And yet, the road kept pulling them west. Writers of the time captured its spirit. John Steinbeck, in The Grapes of Wrath, called Route 66 the Mother Road, the road of flight. He described how it carried families who were beaten down yet unbroken, pushed off their land but not off their will to live. That's why Route 66 became legendary. Not because of its asphalt, not because of the towns it connected, but because of the people who traveled it. It became the stage for millions of human dramas: hunger, hope, despair, and resilience. Every crack in the pavement held a story. Every dusty mile carried tears and determination. For those families, Route 66 wasn't just a road. It was a promise, a lifeline, a whisper in the darkness that said, "Keep going. Something better might be ahead." And so, one family after another pressed forward on that endless ribbon of road, chasing survival across the dust of America. Among the endless stream of weary travelers, one family's story mirrors thousands of others. Let's step into their shoes for a moment. A father, a mother, and 3 children packed into a worn-out Ford with more miles than anyone could count. The father had once been a proud farmer. He grew wheat in Oklahoma, the kind of man who measured seasons by the harvest. But when the Dust Bowl hit, his land turned from golden fields into cracked, barren earth. Day after day, he watched storms of dirt swallow the horizon, coating everything in a suffocating blanket of brown. No rain, no crops, no income. His wife, once the heart of a home filled with laughter, became a master of rationing. She stretched meals until there was almost nothing left to stretch. Flour biscuits made smaller each week. Coffee reused until it was water with a bitter taste. She hid her worry, but her eyes betrayed the fear she carried for her children. And the children, too young to understand the economy, but old enough to feel hunger gnaw at their stomachs, asked when dinner would be ready or why they couldn't go back to school. Their innocence clashed with the harshness of survival. When the bank took their farm, the father loaded everything he could onto the car: a mattress tied with rope, a box of tools, a pan for cooking over open flames, and a single photograph of the farm they once called home. With a heavy heart, they joined the caravan of families heading west, their car sputtering down Route 66. The journey tested them at every turn. The car broke down outside Amarillo, forcing the father to trade his only good set of tools for a spare part. The children cried when the heat grew unbearable, their lips cracked from thirst. At night, they slept by the roadside, the stars their only roof. The mother held her children close, whispering promises of California, orange groves, fields of green, a place where work still existed. But along the way, they discovered the road wasn't paved with opportunity alone. Town after town bore signs that stung like a slap in the face: "No jobs here. Okies go home." They were treated not as neighbors, but as outsiders. The father swallowed his pride again and again, asking strangers for food, begging for work, doing anything to keep the family moving forward. Still, they pressed on. Not because they were fearless, but because they had no choice. Survival demanded motion. For this family, and so many others, Route 66 wasn't just asphalt. It was both a trial and a teacher. It taught them the limits of endurance, the weight of sacrifice, and the fragile yet unbreakable power of hope. And hope was the only thing keeping them alive. Every mile on Route 66 carried a dream, but those dreams were constantly tested by dust, hunger, and exhaustion. Families like the one we just followed lived in a cycle of small victories and crushing setbacks. When the car made it another 50 miles without breaking down, that was a victory. When they found a farmer willing to trade a day's labor for a meal, that was a blessing. When the children smiled at the sight of fruit on a roadside stand, even if they couldn't afford it, it sparked a moment of hope. But for every small win, there was dust. Endless dust. The Dust Bowl wasn't confined to Oklahoma. It followed travelers west, clinging to their clothes, filling their lungs, settling in their souls. Dust storms could blot out the sun, forcing families to pull over, cover their children with blankets, and pray their car wouldn't be buried. And then there was hunger. Hunger that twisted stomachs, blurred vision, and made tempers short. Parents skipped meals so their children could eat. Mothers added more water to soup, stretching it until it was little more than broth. For children, hunger was confusion. For adults, it was shame. Yet through all of it, determination never left them. That stubborn, unshakable belief that no matter how cruel the road became, California would be worth it. Some nights by the roadside, families shared their dreams. Around small fires made of twigs, fathers spoke of steady work and weekly wages. Mothers dreamed of clean homes where children could sleep in real beds. Children dreamed of shoes without holes, bellies that didn't ache, and schools where they could laugh again. Those conversations, spoken in whispers under the stars, were as important as food. They kept spirits alive. But Route 66 had a way of crushing illusions too. Many who made it to California discovered that jobs weren't waiting in abundance. Thousands of families arrived every week, all competing for the same backbreaking labor in cotton fields or fruit orchards. Wages were low. Conditions were brutal. And the hostility from locals was sharp. Okies were seen as outsiders, even threats. Still, families endured. Why? Because once you've come 2,000 miles with everything you own tied to the roof of a car, there's no going back. You fight. You sacrifice. You scrape together survival day by day. And that determination, stronger than hunger, stronger than rejection, is what kept Route 66 alive as more than just a highway. It became a symbol. A reminder that even in the darkest times, people will keep moving forward if there's even the faintest promise of a better life. Dreams carried them. Dust tested them. Determination defined them. And together, those three forces turned Route 66 into something far greater than a road. It became the very spirit of American resilience. When the engines finally went silent and the dust settled, Route 66 was no longer just a strip of highway, it had become a legend. For the families who survived the journey, the road was forever etched into their memories. They remembered the nights spent under the stars, the strangers who offered kindness, and the endless fight to keep moving forward. But more than anything, they remembered what it represented, the line between despair and survival. Route 66 carried an entire generation through the hardest chapter of American history. It was the artery of migration, the road that turned suffering into motion. And even though not every dream came true at the end of it, the road itself gave people something priceless: direction. That's why, decades later, Route 66 still holds a mythical place in American culture. It came to symbolize resilience, determination, and the belief that no matter how bleak life becomes, there is always a road forward. Songs, books, and films celebrated it. Travelers romanticized it. Tourists retraced it. But for those who lived through the Depression, it wasn't nostalgia. It was memory. A memory of hunger, of sacrifice, and of survival against all odds. John Steinbeck was right when he called it the Mother Road. It gave birth to a new chapter in American life, one written by ordinary families who refused to give up. Even today, when people drive along the cracked remnants of Route 66, they aren't just chasing vintage neon signs or roadside diners. Whether they realize it or not, they're touching the same road that once carried families with nothing but hope in their hearts and dust on their clothes. The legacy of Route 66 isn't just about cars, motels, or Americana nostalgia. Its legacy is human. It's in the determination of parents who sacrificed everything for their children. It's in the courage of people who faced humiliation and rejection, yet kept pressing forward. It's in the spirit of resilience that still defines America, the idea that no matter how desperate times become, there is always another mile to travel, another chance to start again. The family we followed didn't find paradise in California. Their work was hard, their pay was small, and their struggles continued. But they survived. Their children grew up remembering the hunger, but also remembering their parents' strength. And when those children had families of their own, they carried forward the same lesson Route 66 had taught them: never stop moving forward. And that is why the story of Route 66 is more than history. It's a message, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, when the world seems against you, there is always a road. Always a way forward. Always hope, waiting at the end of the journey.